Welcome to Spring LIB.
All right, so with this question, this is asking for a lot of critical thinking about what global warming and climate change are and this most recent change that we're currently living in and its impacts, its effects and consequences, and whether or not those things are reversible. And first, I think before we take a look at our options, we need to just lay some groundwork and sort of understand what's happened so far. So, first of all, the climate change event that we're in right now has happened very quickly relative to other events that have happened in Earth's millennia. It's also happened in increasingly fast rate compared to these other events in terms of, you know, how fast year to year the global temperature has increased because of, the burning of fossil fuels since like the Industrial Revolution on a large scale. Um, Now, then, as this is happening, as the global temperature increases, this can set off positive feedback loops that will only increase it more. The textbook mentions clathrates, which are blocks of frozen water and methane in the bottom of oceans. And as the ocean temperature rises, these will melt, releasing the methane out into the atmosphere. Methane is a greenhouse gas, which will only trap in more thermal radiation, which will increase the temperature more, which will lead to the melting of more clathrates, etc., etc. And there are plenty other examples of other positive feedback loops in this climate change event, but that's a good example to remember. Now that we sort of have this background down, our main question that this question is asking is this a reversible process? But it's also asking, what things can be done about it. And while those questions can obviously be essays in and of themselves, we have the benefit of the multiple choice options to read them and decide which ones answer the question to the fullest extent. Um, so let's take a look. Option A is on the side that it is possible to reverse global warming by, lowering fossil fuel usage, alternative fuels that, won't release greenhouse gases, alternatives to CFCs, which um, have opened up the ozone layer in the past and which has affected the ability of the atmosphere to regulate energy, excuse me, and using natural sources of energy as another way to cut down on fossil fuel usage. Option B tells us that global climate change is not reversible because so much has already happened and it's on a course of its own. But we do have these options of reducing fossil fuel usage and finding alternative energy sources to slow this process down. Option C is also on the side of it's not reversible, but it only kind of focuses on reducing fossil fuel usage and using natural sources, not alternative fuels like option B. So option C is not as comprehensive as option B. So that one I would say we could probably discount because it's not even fully answering the question in a way that one of the other options already is. But option D is telling us that global warming is reversible, and we can use new technologies to help prevent temperature changes worldwide, and using wind power and other types of energy to generate this goal. But option D also doesn't give us lowering fossil fuel usage, which might be a given. You could argue that, but it's a multiple choice answer, and there are other options that mention lowering fossil fuel usage. So we can probably discount D as well. Now we're down to A and B. So A says it's reversible. That's one of the major differences. B says it's not. But A includes using alternatives to CFCs, whereas B does not. Now, we could take, now let's also think through option B as well. B tells us that it's not possible to reverse global warming because climate changes have already occurred and settled in the environment. But you can slow it down. Now, one kind of thing that is important to remember too in this conversation is while CFCs are, important in depleting the ozone layer, they have been banned for a long time in many countries. So they're not as high on the list. Also, option A doesn't really fully explain why it's not reversible. But at the same time, consider this. Global warming is climate change. The climate has changed in the past, and it's almost a given that it will revert back to a certain point. But at the same time, so you could argue that it is reversible by its nature. But I think that this question is more thinking in terms of what are the effects that humans have had on maybe increasing the temperature to a point where it has never gone before, it might have never gone before, and if it's reversible before that point. And given, I think, what this textbook in particular gives in terms of examples in the history of global warming and how, this is sort of unprecedented what we're seeing, it might already be on a track because it has set off these positive feedback loops like the cloth rates that we can't control because that's a naturally occurring thing. I think it's fair to say that B is going to be your most likely option, based on, sort of the context of the question and what the answer choices say. B is, again, more detailed, even though it doesn't include the CFC mention, but I also am unsure of how relevant that is in this current context. So I think it's safe to say that B is in line with this answer, although I do also think that this question is a critical thinking question and could definitely be open to a more essay type format as well.